Hello, hello. I'm Casey.
And I'm Fallon.
And this is
Render the Darkness.
Okay. Today we are going to be covering and talking about Friday the 13th. Okay, so the episode's fact is ironically also about Friday the 13th. This is about Friday the 13th, the movie franchise.
One of my favorite movies.
Yes, mine too. It's classic.
Yes.
Okay, so
We gotta do it.
This is not sponsored. Okay. The original name for the Friday the 13th movie franchise was actually going to be titled Long Night at Camp Blood. It was changed to the name that we all know and love during a rewrite of the script. And as a bonus fact, Jason wasn't supposed to be the name of the main character. Or not main character, but of the mask killer. Sorry. Luckily, screenwriter Victoria Miller opted to change it to Jason from Josh, is what it was originally supposed to be. Josh Voorhees. She decided to change it to Jason, which I read was supposed to be a combination of her sons' names, which were Josh and Ian.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a little fun fact. Yeah. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
I, for one, am glad that they decided to make the changes that they made.
Yeah.
But that's probably just because that's what, like I said before, we've all grown to know and love. We know him as Jason Voorhees from Camp Crystal Lake in the Friday the 13th series. It would be a much different world, I think, if we knew him as Josh Voorhees from
Long
Night at Camp Blood.
That's what we knew at the start, then thinking about it now, and if he would have said, it was supposed to be Jason, we'd probably be like, don't sound right, because, years and years and years and years of Josh.
I don't know.
Camp Blood.
Yeah.
Or wait, Long Night at Camp Blood, because it was actually called Camp Blood. What? Yeah, in the movie there was a couple references calling it Camp Blood. That's why I was like, Long Night at Camp Blood.
Wasn't it Camp Crystal Lake?
Yeah, but in a few of the movies, it was also, they were calling it, whenever the teenagers were talking about it, they were saying Camp Blood.
Oh, so it's kind of like its nickname or whatever. There's none of that because you just shook the camera so hard. Sorry for the vibration.
Sorry.
Earthquake. That's not funny. Don't do that. Okay, so today, since it just happens to fall on the date that it does, I thought it would be fun to do an episode about Friday the 13th, the day of misfortune and bad luck. We're going to also cover some of the events throughout history that have taken place on Friday the 13th that only seem to cement the superstition even further.
Alright. Let's get to it.
You'd think I would be able to say cement better.
Cement?
Yeah. Either say cement or cement. You'd think I would say it better since, my husband does that for a living. But anyways.
Cement.
First thing I should mention, the idea of Friday the 13th being bad luck seemed to mostly just be a Western culture thing. For example, Greek culture's day of bad luck is Tuesday the 13th. And I think I read that Spanish culture is also Tuesday the 13th.
Okay.
Italy's bad luck day is also Friday, but theirs falls on the 17th instead of the 13th. So on and so forth on the different days and dates that other countries believe to be bad luck.
I wonder why they didn't do a Monday the 13th, because Mondays, bleh.
They are manic. Do it. I will say, though, as far as I can tell, the reason for all the superstition behind it, no matter where you're looking, seems to all revolve around some kind of a major event happening on said day and date like the combination of the day and date, or something happening on a specific day, coupled with the general belief that the number 13 is bad luck. If you ask any numerologists, they will all tell you 13 is a bad luck number.
Yeah, because like hotels, don't they like not have a 13th floor?
They don't. And
sorry,
I just took a little piece of my. You're gonna hear that repeated in a minute.
Sorry, it just popped in my head.
It's okay. It's okay. How dare you know about 13? Okay, so let's talk about some of the reasons why the number 13 is such bad luck.
Okay.
To completely understand why it's such bad luck, why 13 is such a bad luck number, we kind of need to know the meaning of the number 12, or at least what it's said to represent, which is a number of completion, such as there are 12 months in a year, 12 zodiacs, 12 disciples, 12 Olympic gods, your body has 12 pairs of ribs, like so on and so forth. And with 13 being the number that immediately follows 12, unfairly, placement alone seems to partially contribute, but was further supported by many different events that just happened to fall in correlation with the number. Excuse me again. For example, Christians
Just Christian.
Christian and Christians believe it to be unlucky because there were 13 people at the Last Supper.
Oh, okay.
And soon after, one of them was killed, obviously Jesus, and because it was believed that Judas, who betrayed Jesus, was the 13th guest at the supper.
Okay, yeah.
Some people still believe it to be bad luck to have 13 people sitting at a dinner table. And while we're on the topic of Christian beliefs associated with misfortune on Friday the 13th, and we've covered kind of like why they believe 13 is unlucky, let's go ahead and talk about why they pair Friday with that number as bad luck as well.
Okay.
Friday is the day of Jesus' crucifixion.
Oh.
It's also the day it's believed that Eve tempted Adam with the apple. It's also the day of the Great Flood, and it's thought to be the day that Cain killed Abel.
Oh, dang.
So there's quite a bit of reasons why Friday is not a good day, biblically speaking. So then we're going to move on to Norse mythology. Norse mythology. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I do know how to talk. Okay. On to Norse mythology on why the number 13 is bad luck. At the dinner of Valhalla, hosted by Odin, where he and 11 of his closest god friends were supposed to consume a boar that was thought to be magical because it was killed daily but somehow resurrected itself every night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they thought that if they ate from this boar, that it would provide like an infinite amount of food for eternity because of the magical meat.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the dinner was crashed by none other than the god Loki.
Loki!
The trickster, the god of mischief and deception. Making him, although uninvited, he would have technically been the 13th guest.
I love Loki.
Loki didn't crash the party just to say hi.
Oh.
Let me take you back a little. Odin loved Balder, the god of light and joy as well as peace and forgiveness. That was his son. He was also Frigg's son, which was Odin's wife. We'll talk about her in a minute. He loved him so much, he made it so that nothing on earth could kill his son.
Okay.
Except there was one tiny oversight in this. He forgot to include mistletoe. Loki, knowing he forgot to include mistletoe, he dipped an arrow tip in mistletoe before crashing the dinner party. And I read 2 different variants of what happened. One said that Loki himself shot Balder, but another said that Loki had tricked Balder's blind brother Hodor, god of darkness and winter and cold, into shooting him.
Oh.
Either way, Balder was shot and killed, thereby throwing earth into darkness upon the god's mourning.
Okay, well, let me take back what I just said. I don't like this Loki.
You like Tom Hiddleston Loki.
Yes.
This is not Tom Hiddleston Loki.
Well, and that Loki and spoiler alert if you haven't watched it yet, Supernatural Loki.
Oh, well, yeah, Richard Spike Jr.
Those are the Lokis I'm talking about. This
I got
Loki
you.
kind of sucks.
Yeah. Oh, Supernat Loki.
Yeah, he was pretty
I
cool.
love him. He was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Okay. Anywho's, that's not the only belief in Norse mythology. Oh my goodness. Norse? You say it 5 times fast.
Norse mythology?
Say it 5 times fast.
You didn't say it 5 times fast. You just said it once.
Well, I'm just saying, you're laughing back there. It's not that easy.
I'm just laughing at the way you're reacting to afterwards.
That's not the only belief in Norse mythology as to the association. I'm not saying it again. As to the association of Friday the 13th being bad luck. That explains why they believe the number 13 to be bad. But let's talk about why they believe Friday to be bad first.
All right.
Freya, who I read was also thought to be Frigg, which literally means Friday, as does Freya when translated to English, from what I understand.
Interesting.
I read Freya is the word for Friday for the Scandinavian days of the week.
Oh, okay.
Too. So, anyway, she was Odin's wife. She was the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, and was an extremely misunderstood god. There was a lot of history and beliefs surrounding her, but I'm just going to give the basics that I feel are most relevant to the episode because there are tons of different interpretations as to the true layout of events. I worded this the best that I could. As you can see, I struggle to use words at all, so I apologize ahead of time if I did any kind of misrepresentation or any misinformation. That was not my goal or intention. I pieced it together to the best of my understanding.
Okay.
So she was thought to be the one who trained the Valkyrie and would later be accused of training witches as well.
Oh.
Once the Christians eventually ended up taking over, and because she was also thought to be the goddess of sex and magic, and she had a pretty strong female following at the time that they took over. That wasn't good for the church, so she was deemed the queen of witches and was banished to the mountaintop.
Oh.
And anyone who considered themselves a follower of hers would be considered a witch as well. So there began a belief that every Friday she would come back down from the mountain to join a coven of 11 witches as well as the devil himself, giving them 13, and she would stir up trouble for all of her foes for the following week. Therefore, you get Friday the 13th because her name was Friday, or it means Friday, which I think ended up being considered Freya Day.
Okay.
If you say that fast, you get Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
And the day of the witches' Sabbath. And there were 13 participating in the weekly cursing of the church and anyone else who had a hand in banishing her.
Okay.
I would like to note, too, that Fridays were originally considered a day to celebrate her before she was banished, which is why it was originally called Freya Day. Huh.
Some days are...
Sorry.
I have them too.
Anyway, after banishment, it became thought to be the day that she would cast her curses.
Okay. So...
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. It made me talk more.
So Odin didn't do anything about her banishment? He just let her be banished?
Okay, so I don't know about that because when I was researching this, again, like I said, there was many iterations about what actually happened here.
Yeah, okay.
So there was also another version of this story where Freya and Frigg were not the same people. But they were confused for one another by the church, which, if that's the case, then Odin wouldn't have a reason to step in because Frigg was his actual wife. So if they weren't the same person, then it wouldn't be his wife that all of this was happening to.
Right, okay.
Which might make sense as to why he didn't step in. I didn't read anything about Odin when it came to reading about Freya. So that should have been the version of that I went with. But I'm including it now because of your question, so covering my arse there.
Okay.
a little bit, I think. And again, I will re-emphasize on the back of your question, I pieced this together, like phrase, story of association to the day, the best I could.
Okay.
I'm certain I left something out that probably needed to be in there, or said something that wasn't in the right place on the timeline of events. I kind of took a risk including it in the story at all, but I did because I thought it was imperative to the episode. If I did a bad job on that one, I apologize. But the side note here, the reason I wanted to include her is because she's actually associated with another superstition as well.
Okay.
And this one I do know is true and factual, so I don't feel bad saying this one at all.
Okay.
She was at one point gifted 2 black cats from Thor.
Oh, cool.
From that point forward, she always had her cats with her at all times, and she actually became known as the protector of cats.
Oh,
A lot of pictures of her are kind of depict her riding like a, I don't know what they call them, carriage, like a buggy kind of a thing that the gods are often seen on or whatever.
Oh,
But
yeah.
hers are being led by 2 cats instead of like 2 horses.
That's cool.
There's a name for what? Chariot? Is it a chariot?
Yeah, I think it's a chariot. Yeah.
Chariot. And that's kind of where the superstition of the black cats are said to stem from, because once she got banished and she kind of went all dark side.
That makes sense. Okay.
If you've seen one of her cats, it was considered bad luck because they belonged to her.
Oh, I like cats.
Well, I know, but that's where that superstition stemmed from.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, when I got, again, I know I did a really terrible job at putting that part in. Ow.
I thought you did pretty good.
But I will say, out of everything I did researching-wise on this case, my favorite thing to research was all the stuff about the gods. Because I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, and it was super interesting. If you're interested in mythology at all, I definitely recommend looking up the gods that I'm mentioning in this case, because it's very interesting, a very good read, and I just had a lot of fun with it. Another popular association to the origin of the day was the day of the fall of the Knights Templar. This was a group of warriors that were tasked with protecting the pilgrims en route to the Holy Land after the Christians captured Jerusalem in the First Crusade. The fall of the Knights Templar took place on Friday, October 13th, 1307. And this was done by King Philip IV and Pope Clement V of France. This was a traumatic event in history because they had been the dominating force in Christianity for nearly 200 years prior to this day. Not only was the arrest of, and I'm going to try to say this the best I can, Jacques de Molay and many other higher-up Templars, not only was that a pivotal moment, but their charges were of such a disgraceful nature that it would destroy everything the Templar had built. They were being charged with unspeakable crimes against the church, such as heresy and worshiping false idols. The men would be tortured until they confessed. But the real reason this was believed to have happened was because King Philip IV was in a massive amount of debt. And so he started the rumors of claims against the Templar in order to seize their property and gain good favor with the Pope, which unfortunately seemingly worked.
Oh, that's not good.
I will say that I did read that in 2007, the Knights Templar actually were declared in a proclamation put forth by the Vatican, where they cleared their name, and any claims that had been against them were completely dismissed, and they were deemed innocent of all accusations and charges.
Well, that's good.
So they did kind of get their name back in 2007 via the Vatican.
Bad King Philip IV. Bad King.
And I will also say, and this is really bold because I'm going to try to say this name again, but I will say that I also read that out of all the men that were tortured, Jacques de Molay was the only one who did not crack. No matter what they did to him, he never confessed to a single thing.
Wow.
And trust me, they tortured this man.
What was his name?
Jacques de Molay.
Jacques. Go, Jacques. That's what I say, Jacques.
So it seems that there's a belief that Friday itself is bad luck. Interesting fact, I read Britain used to pretend like I'm so sorry. Anyway, I read Britain used to call Friday Hangman Day because that's the day when most executions would take place. And that's when they would hang their accused
Lovely.
or sentenced. And 13 is also individually bad luck and unlucky. So putting them together kind of really makes the potential for a super bad luck situation. And that's kind of believed to be what makes this particular combination of a day and a date in particular so feared. In fact, there's even a name for the fear of Friday the 13th, and I wouldn't have put it in here if I'd have known I was going to struggle to talk this much.
Wow.
Hang with me while I try to pronounce this one. It is called paraskevicatria.
Wow, I wouldn't even be able to attempt That's
That's what I'm going with. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's all you're going to get out of me on that one.
They should just call it Friday the 13th phobia.
There's actually 3 separate names because you have a fear of the day of Friday, the day itself, which has a really long, ridiculous name as well. And then you have the fear of the number 13 by itself, which also has a really long, ridiculous name.
Oh.
I had initially put them both in there and was going to say that all together, but I tried to say that a couple of times after I typed it out and said, duck that, and deleted that part and only included the one that was about both of them together, because that's what this case is about, is both of them together.
Oh,
so
there you go.
Okay, now that we've stepped kind of super far back in time to go over some of the believed origins of the day, let's go over some recorded events that have happened throughout time to yet again lend further signification to it outside of the ones I've already mentioned. Before I dive into it, I want to say that some of the ones I'm about to mention are cases that I already have scheduled to do in the future. So there's a couple that I don't go into great detail on, but I did want to include them because they did happen on the day that I'm talking about now, so it felt kind of wrong to leave them out.
Okay.
And just for the record, these are not in order of how they happened, so the dates are going to kind of jump around a little bit, but they did all happen on Friday the 13th.
Okay.
On September 13th, 1940, Buckingham Palace was bombed during World War II by the Germans. The bomb was not only able to strike the palace, but also the palace chapel. And yes, both the king and queen were inside at the time that this happened, but luckily neither of them were harmed.
That's scary.
It's scary. The murder of Kitty Genovese took place on March 13th, 1964. This is one of my pre-scheduled cases, so I'm not going to go into too many details, but I will say that for anybody who has heard of Genovese syndrome, Kitty's case is where this derived from.
Genovese
syndrome.
Genovese syndrome.
Her case is where that name came from.
Huh. I don't even think I've ever heard of that.
I'm not going to tell you about it because I'm doing a case on it.
Okay then.
You're actually going to know the next one that I talk about. One of the most famous plane crashes that has ever happened occurred on October 13th, 1972. This was the crash of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 151, also known as the Andes Disaster Flight. The plane had 45 passengers. 12 people perished in the initial crash, and the survivors were left stranded with no food or shelter. Eventually, they had no choice but to resort to cannibalism to survive. Out of the original 45 on the plane, 72 days later, the last surviving 16 would be rescued.
Man, that's terrible.
On July 13th, 1951, in Kansas, Missouri, they experienced a record-breaking flood. The rain began on July 9th and lasted for several days, but the day that all the water actually crested, which from what I understand just means the day that the water reached its highest peak levels, the rivers actually emerged, causing catastrophic damage.
Oh, no.
September 13th, 1996 was the day rapper and producer Tupac Shakur was gunned down at a stoplight in Vegas. He would pass away later, and to this day, no one has ever been convicted of his murder.
I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to say a name, but we know now.
Well, again, I didn't say we didn't know. I said to this day, no one's been convicted of his murder.
I'm just saying, we know now. sad, sad day.
It was a sad day. It really was. And I wasn't laughing at that. I was laughing at her.
Yeah, just
for the record.
Yeah.
Okay. On January 13th, 1939, in Victoria, Australia, they experienced what was dubbed the Black Friday fires. Due to a drought and incredibly dry conditions, a fire broke out and burned almost 5 million acres of land.
Wow.
There was an estimated 71 people who lost their lives during the fires themselves. More people lost their lives due to the drought and the weather.
Yeah.
But as far as were killed by the fire directly, there was 71 people who lost their lives. Not to mention thousands of homes and businesses that were destroyed.
Dang.
On April 13th, 2012, the San Diego S&M killing occurred. But again, this is one of my pre-planned cases, so I'm not going to talk about it in too many details. But for anybody who already knows about this case, it's the day that Brittany Kilgore tragically and senselessly lost her life.
I don't think I've heard of that one either.
Well, you will. Nathan Bedford Forrest, an infamous monster of a man, a Ku Klux Klan leader who was actually noted as being the Klan's first ever Grand Wizard, whatever that means. Sounds terrible.
Yes.
Was born on July 13th, 1821. He was, as well as many of his men and followers, were responsible for the Fort Pillow massacre, where an estimated 500 people lost their lives.
God.
On November 13th, 1970, the Bala cyclone occurred, which is not only still to this day one of the deadliest storms to happen in Bangladesh, but they are still cleaning up and rebuilding from it.
Wow.
It was recorded that anywhere from 150,000 to 550,000 people lost their lives due to this storm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really tragic. On January 13th, 2012, the Costa Concordia sank, making it the largest passenger ship that has ever wrecked, surpassing the Titanic by more than double on number of passengers it had on it.
Ooh.
The wreck of the Costa Concordia unfortunately claimed the lives of 32 of those passengers. The ship's captain would go on to be convicted of manslaughter in 2015 for those deaths.
Why? I mean, it was an accident, right?
I believe he was under the influence.
Oh.
I don't believe he was doing what he was supposed to be doing.
Oh, okay.
On October 13th, 1972, the same day as the Andes plane crash disaster, Russian flight Aeroflot 27 crashed, killing all 174 people that were on board. The plane was only 3 miles from its destination.
Oh, no.
I think they believe that what happened was it got hit by lightning.
Oh, no.
On June 13th, 1952, Swedish flight DC-3, which was flying over the Baltic Sea at the time, seemingly just vanished. It was never found. I did read, though, that it was later speculated the plane may have been shot down by a Russian pilot who was under the assumption that the plane was spying on the Soviet Union.
Well, I can't believe they still haven't found it, though.
Never found the plane.
Wow.
They searched and they never found it.
Huh.
On November 13th, 1829, Sam Patch, a.k.a. America's first daredevil, would make his second jump over the high falls of the Genesee River, but sadly it would not be successful. Sam became most famous when he successfully jumped over Niagara Falls from a height of 125 feet earlier that year. He made his first jump over the Genesee River a week prior on September 6th at a height of 92 feet. Sam thought that the jump wasn't daring enough to pull in the amount of onlookers and money he had hoped for, so he thought ramping up the dare would help. He would make the ill-fated decision to make the jump a second time from a height of 125 feet. Unfortunately, he would not be so lucky on this jump, and his body would be found 4 months later. I did read also that upon doing an autopsy on his body, it's believed that the reason this jump failed is because when he jumped and his body had to change between altitudes, his blood vessels bursted.
Oh, gosh.
And that's what caused this jump to fail. And the last event that took place on Friday the 13th that I wanted to include comes out of England. The boy who was involved in this event's name was never released, but it was a teenage boy who was at an air show in 2010 and he was struck by lightning, which is bizarre enough in itself. But not only did this take place on Friday the 13th, but it happened at exactly 13:13 military time.
Wow.
And the boy did make a full recovery.
Oh, that's good.
And these are just a few of the notable events that has taken place in the unluckiest of days throughout time. There are countless more, such as weather misfortunes, travel disasters, stock market crashes, and as well as just freak accidents that have taken place.
Yeah.
Although I know that this day is definitely, at least in the Western Hemisphere, proven to have some pretty terrible things that happen on it, it's definitely not the only superstition out there.
Yeah, no.
Some of the most common ones are walking under a ladder will bring you bad luck.
Yep.
Breaking a mirror will bring you 7 years bad luck. Tipping over or spilling a salt. You'll have bad luck unless you throw some of it over your left shoulder. Hearing a crow calling is considered bad luck. Crossing your fingers, of course, a black cat crossing in front of you. Another thing considered bad luck is killing a ladybug.
Hold on. Okay, so 2 things. You said hearing a crow's calling is bad luck? Because I hear those things crow all the time.
That's, in some places, they believe that is bad luck.
And 2, crossing your finger just...
Well, that's just a superstition. That one's not necessarily bad luck. That one's like, the superstition of crossing your fingers.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like crossing your fingers was
they're
bad.
they're not all bad luck. These are just superstitions. No,
okay.
These are just superstitions. They're not. That's why I'm trying to specify the ones that are bad luck. That's why I'm saying behind them which ones are bad luck.
I misunderstood.
No, and I probably should have placed that differently. I probably should have put it in the middle of the list of the bad luck things. But anyway, knocking on wood is another superstition, and my personal favorite, if you step on a crack, you'll break your mama's back.
Yeah.
Did that one all the time when I was little. I missed every crack I could. I jumped over all of them. Used to get in trouble too. Sometimes I'd have to go all the way around the crack.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I did that too. It's just like, because you're just like, well, I mean, it's probably not true, but back in your head, you're just like, what if it is?
What if it is? How do I explain that one?
Yeah.
Again, these are just some examples. There are so many more out there throughout the world, and it was such a fun rabbit hole to go down looking them up and learning their origins. But again, none of them seem to be more proven to be true throughout history than the Friday the 13th superstition.
Okay.
Still to this day, as you mentioned and or asked earlier, there are hotels who refuse to have a 13th room. There are hospitals, businesses, and apartment buildings who refuse to have a 13th floor. And there are some airlines that refuse to have a 13th row of seats. So it's still very much strong and living on, the superstition of Friday the 13th. So what do you think? Do you think that it's a bad luck day, or do you kind of fall underneath the group of people in the areas that the days are believed to be bad luck who kind of feel the opposite? There's like a whole group of people out there who feel like that day actually brings them good fortune.
Well, I know some people think that the number 13 is lucky. Like, isn't that like Taylor Swift's lucky number or something?
I have no idea. I don't know anything about Taylor Swift.
I don't know, I think I've seen it on a commercial, like one of them Capital One commercials.
I have no idea.
But anyway, but yeah, they're
okay, me lying.
but me personally, I do believe in some of them superstitions, and I do think that, Friday the 13th is a little
hairball.
Yeah,
a little iffy.
It's a little hairy. It can be a
little.
It
could go either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely believe in, and I think you can attest to this. I knock on wood probably 50 or 60 times a day.
Yeah.
Anytime I say anything positive at all, I have to knock on wood. That's why you guys hear me say such negative things in my videos. I don't want to mess up the sound by knocking on wood, saying something nice.
And another thing about the Friday the 13th too, like depending on the day, like it also depends on like how I wake up. If I wake up on that day and I feel like something's not right, I won't leave my house. And I'm not kidding.
So you think it's like an intuition thing for that day?
It may be for some people. I mean, some people may just flat out refuse to do anything on that day. Like I said, me, if I wake up and I don't feel, and if I feel like, it's like another day.
Yeah.
I'll be fine. But like if I feel like there's anything whatsoever that's weird, I'm not going anywhere.
That's fair. That's fair enough. Okay. Sorry about all the mess ups in that one. That was 100% my fault. I don't know why I could not talk today, but I think I kind of got it together at the end there.
Yeah, you did pretty good. Don't worry about it. Mine's next, and y'all know how I can't talk, so don't feel bad. I just come to terms with I can't talk.
We are who we are. We're human people. It is what it is. Okay. So, do you guys have any personal Friday the 13th stories that you'd like to tell? We'd love to make an episode out of you guys talking about your stories, the listeners, people's personal stories. So, if you have one you'd like to share, please feel free to reach out via email or any of our social media pages. And we'd love to share it for you. Or if you personally want to share it, we would love to have you on the show as a guest.
Yeah.
So, other than that, as always, thanks for spending time with us today. And
thank you for joining.
Yeah, this was a really fun one. It was a really fun one. Dancing Fallon back there. If you just want to see Fallon dance some more, write in. Make a request.
People are probably like, no. No, thank you.
If you want us to change our background and Fallon to stop earthquaking the camera,
dang, I am.
let us know.
Oh,
Did it
no.
again. Oh, no. Vertigo.
Sorry.
Anyway, this is Render the Darkness.